and challenges for St. Lucia. You can be part of this live conversation. Call us at 758-451-9788 or send a message via WhatsApp to 758-723-3333. Conversation with the Governor of the ECCB this Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. on DBS Television. Also catch the live stream on the DBS Television and ECCB Connect's Facebook pages and YouTube channels.
We have exciting news. ECCB Connects now has a WhatsApp channel. Follow us and stay in the loop with our latest videos, photos, and updates. It's simple. Just search for ECCB Connects in your WhatsApp Updates tab and get connected with all things ECCB. ECCB Connects, who we are, what we do, and how we serve you.
It's a conversation with the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank this Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. on DBS Television. Join me, Lisa Joseph, as I engage Governor Antoine in discussion on the big push pursuing bold actions to transform St. Lucia's economy. We will also discuss the establishment of a regulatory commission for the Citizenship by Investment Program, consumer protection in the banking sector, and economic prospects and challenges for St. Lucia. You can be part of this live conversation. Call us at 758-451-9788 or send a message via WhatsApp to 758-723-3333. Conversation with the Governor of the ECCB this Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. on DBS Television. Also catch the live stream on the DBS Television and ECCB Connect's Facebook pages and YouTube channels.
We have exciting news. ECCB Connects now has a WhatsApp channel. Follow us and stay in the loop with our latest videos, photos, and updates. It's simple. Just search for ECCB Connects in your WhatsApp Updates tab and get connected with all things ECCB. ECCB Connects, who we are, what we do, and how we serve you.
It's a conversation with the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank this Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. on DBS Television. Join me, Lisa Joseph, as I engage Governor Antoine in discussion on the big push pursuing bold actions to transform St. Lucia's economy. We will also discuss the establishment of a regulatory commission for the Citizenship by Investment Program, consumer protection in the banking sector, and economic prospects and challenges for St. Lucia. You can be part of this live conversation. Call us at 758-451-9788 or send a message via WhatsApp to 758-723-3333. Conversation with the Governor of the ECCB this Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. on DBS Television. Also catch the live stream on the DBS Television and ECCB Connect's Facebook pages and YouTube channels.
We have exciting news. ECCB Connects now has a WhatsApp channel. Follow us and stay in the loop with our latest videos, photos, and updates. It's simple. Just search for ECCB Connects in your WhatsApp Updates tab and get connected with all things ECCB. ECCB Connects, who we are.
Hello and welcome. We're having a special conversation with the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, the ECCB that is. He is Timothy Antoine. The Governor was last with us on the country outreach missions. That's July 27, 2022. How time flies. Now, lots has happened since then. The Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, the ECCU, lots of great news, sometimes not so much. But there's great news, like the increased profits of the ECCB, and the governor will tell us about that. For the 2023-2024 financial year, the ECCB attained a record profit of $80.2 million, the highest ever in the bank's history, as contained in the published independent auditor's report and financial statements for the financial year ended 31st March 2024. The record yield comes after the governor issued the Big Push Challenge in January of 2023 at the launch of the bank's 40th anniversary celebrations. The Big Push calls on the governments and the people of the region to take collective actions to double the size of their economies over the next 10 years, thereby helping to elevate the quality of life of the people. So it would be reasonable to assume we've not just made strides, we've achieved in some areas, but a closer micro-examination, particularly here in St. Lucia, shows that there is still work to be done. What work would that be? What actions do we need to take? The governor and the ECCB is recommending crime reduction, human capital formation, digital transformation, financial sector development, fiscal adjustment, and climate resilience. Those are imperative, they say, for St. Lucia's Big Push. We're happy to have the governor here for that conversation. It's going to be a great one over the next hour and a half. We are live on the DBS Facebook page. We're also live on the ECCB Connect's Facebook and YouTube channel. We will take your calls. Absolutely. That's coming up later. The telephone number is 451-9788. You can also give us some WhatsApp messages. That's at 723-3333. For our regional viewers, as well as you in the diaspora, we're not forgetting you. Please, you could tag us on those. Importantly, use the area code for the WhatsApp and call in as well, using 758-1758. Governor, thank you so much for coming through. It's good to have you in St. Lucia again.
Thank you very much, Lisa. So good evening to you, your colleagues here in the studio, St. Lucians at home and abroad. It's absolutely great to be back in the Helen of the West.
So the Big Push pursuing bold actions to transform St. Lucia's economy. Before we get to all of that good stuff, I want to ask you about what the global situation looks like post-pandemic, because, you know, the inflation has been squeezing us really hard. So is there reprieve on the horizon?
There is some progress there. And yes, it's an important place to start, because the truth is St. Lucia and the currency union operate in a global environment. And for all our hard work in the currency union and in St. Lucia, we are affected by the global economic developments. The good news is that inflation is falling. I know you're not feeling it yet. Many of you are not seeing it yet. Somebody asked me this week, which supermarket, which shop? But I also had to point out food prices are generally higher than the average prices. So one has to always be mindful of that when we look at inflation. But globally, inflation has fallen. In the United States, which is of course our major trading partner and to which the EC dollar is pegged, inflation is now down to around 2.5%, the target being 2%. And lest we forget, 2 years ago inflation was at 9%. So when I say it's down, it is coming down. And we will see the Fed this month begin to reduce interest rates, which is a signal that they feel that the inflation issue is finally being resolved. The other piece of good news is that the global economy continues to grow. Not as fast as it did before the pandemic, but it is growing at just around 3% this year and next year. And so the initial concerns, for example, that there may have been a recession in the US, those have not materialized and at this stage are not projected to materialize. And why am I making this point? Because tourism is the biggest income earner in St. Lucia and the currency union. And the fact of the matter is, when inflation is lower, Americans and others, Europeans, Canadians, have more disposable income and are more likely to take a vacation. So that is good news for us, given the business that we're in. So some progress after a difficult few years.
So how have we fared within the ECCU? And you talk about the inflation rate going down globally. We're expecting some movement within the U.S. economy. And so how have we done over the last year since you were last with us?
So because we're pegged to the US dollar, and we've been pegged to the US dollar since 1976, so 48 years and counting, most of the inflation we experience in St. Lucia and our currency union is imported because it's directly tied to what is happening in our major trading partner, the United States. So when they peaked, we peaked. And now that it's falling in the US, it's also falling here because we're importing much of what we do from the US through the US. So that is a positive development. So we have seen inflation come down. Remember, inflation is a rise in the general price level. And as I said, when you look at inflation, I just need to make this point, we have to look at not just food, which is what we see weekly in the supermarket and in our shops, but you have to look at energy. Oil prices have fallen. You have to look at housing. You have to look at transport. You have to look at telecoms, internet. You know, there are a range of things in that basket. And two of the big ones, obviously, are food and oil, or food and energy. And we have seen prices come down.
How long will it take for us to be able to feel that lowering of the inflation rate? It's not going to be an immediate
No, it's
felt,
not.
would it?
No, it's not. There is always a lag. And the truth is, and we have to be candid about that, prices are sticky downwards. So if a price goes up, it seldom comes down or doesn't come down fast enough. It may not grow or go higher, but to get it back down. So if something was costing a pound of something was costing $5, it's now costing $7. It may not come back down to 5. It will not go to 8 or 9. It may come down to 6, but seldom back to 5. That's a reality we see in commerce. So I think with the reduction, we will begin to see, and we are beginning to see. So price at the pump is an example. Consider when the price was $17, $18. Now it's back down to 15, 16. I mean, it's still high, but it's come down. That's an example of what I mean, because oil prices have fallen. But these are our real challenges, and we import oil. The other thing we have to be mindful of always is that geopolitical risk abound. So even as I say what I just said, which are factual, the reality is that we have a war in the Middle East. We have a war in Ukraine. Any number of geopolitical events can change the outlook almost overnight. And that is why we have to be constantly vigilant. So while there is good news, we have to be mindful of the risks such as climate. Look at what happened with Hurricane Beryl in our neighboring countries of St. Vincent, the Grenadines, and Grenada, and specifically Carriacou, Union Island, and the Grenadines. Cyber, and geopolitical events. Obviously, we're watching, like everyone else, to see what happens in the U.S. this November with the U.S. presidential election. It's a consequential election, not just for the United States, but for the world. So those are things that we have to keep a watch on, because we do not control those things.
And the ECCB, though, I saw you giving a little smile when I spoke about the profit. So under your leadership, the ECCB is doing well. And so you'll be sharing some of what it is that you're doing over there and how you're passing it on to our leaders so that we too can see that soaring within our economies. So profits, this is wonderful. Did it come as a surprise to you? What was your pathway to ensuring that there was growth for the ECCB?
No, not a surprise, and we have to remember where we came from. So the bank had several years of strong profits. Then we had 2 years of losses. And we said we would rebound. The bank takes a very conservative approach to how we account for our reserves and how we report our reserves. So when the Fed raised interest rates, a lot of the losses we had in 23, 22, 23 was on account of the rapid rise in interest rates by the Fed. Because when interest rates rise, price fall, and so we had that effect on our balance sheet. And we're very conservative, so we mark to market, right? Now that prices have stabilized, but also because interest rates are high, we have been making significant earnings on interest rates, because interest rates by the Fed are currently, interest rate is currently between 5.25%. So we've been earning quite a lot on most of the reserves of the central bank are invested in the US and are invested in US securities. So that interest rate has benefited us in terms of very high income, and that shows in our profits. And so we had as you said, we had a record year last year, and we are having another very strong year this year.
And I know for the ordinary man, he's thinking, well, how does that benefit us in the ECCU in any way?
Well, in the first instance, it keeps our reserves strong. Remember, since 1976, we've been pegged 1 US to 2.7 EC. We sometimes take that for granted, Lisa, but we should not. The fact of the matter is that stability means that the value of the dollar in nominal terms, not real terms, in nominal terms is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. You can wake up tomorrow morning and know that your $500 in the bank is still $500 in nominal terms. There are places in the world where you wake up and the value of your $500 is now $400, $300, almost overnight because of inflation. What that arrangement gives us is relatively stable and low inflation. Because again, we peg to the US, we track in US inflation. There's also confidence. The fact of the matter is that you can get foreign exchange freely. You can go to the bank, and the bank will, you bring your EC dollars, they will give you US dollars or whatever your foreign exchange is. If our banks do not have it, they can come to the central bank, and the central bank can provide it. Obviously, we sell it to them, they buy it from us, we sell it to them. There are no exchange controls. There are no foreign exchange restrictions. So a person who has a business here and who needs to repatriate profits, dividends, overseas to shareholders outside, can do so freely without any restrictions. Now, you must know that in other parts of our region, that is not the case. There are countries larger than our countries where there are foreign exchange restrictions, and you simply cannot move foreign reserves out of the system without permission. There are no such controls in the currency union. These are the benefits. So the profits enable us to continue to keep our dollar strong and to serve our region, so that making sure our examiners are in our banks doing their inspections. That's an important role that we have to play. Every few weeks we are in one of our banks looking at them very carefully to ensure that they are following the law, following the standards, because our job is to help keep people's deposits safe. We play a key role in maintaining the payment system. People don't see that, but behind the scenes, all of the clearing of checks, electronic funds transfer, we, the ECCB, facilitate that. And we need resources to do those things. We move currency around the region. We have 8 countries, they're all islands. We have to move that around. That is a significant cost. All of those things are supported. And then we support our members in very specific ways. We invest. And later on, I'm hoping I could tell you a little bit about what we do with our youth. So when you ask, where is the money going? It's going back into our member countries.
Now, so for St. Lucia, we remain the largest economy in the ECCU,
Yes.
and we contributed some 26.5% to the regional GDP for 2023. The projected growth on average is about 4% for
Yes.
the next 3 years. And what will account for that?
So principally tourism. I mean, if you notice, and at least I would hope everybody is seeing that, so that it's not just numbers, but you can see and feel some of that. Tourism has been very strong, a strong recovery in St. Lucia. And so the 4% that we project in terms of average growth for St. Lucia over the next 3 years, this year, next year, and the following, is predicated on strong tourism, continued strong tourism, and of course, key to that will be continued growth in our source markets, the US, Canada, the UK in particular, and also the Caribbean, and construction. And when I speak of construction, I'm speaking about public and private, but particularly the public construction, the infrastructure projects. There are several projects that are planned. Some have started, some are planned to commence soon. once those projects move, we will see a growth impact. So principally, it will be tourism and construction.
But for our big push for St. Lucia and the doubling of the size of the economy, you were saying that it should be from $5.74 billion in 2023. The projection is for us to go to 11.48 billion by 2033. So I want to ask you, what is the pathway to achieving this, considering we're not near double digits in our growth rate as yet?
So the basic proposition is that we have to grow this economy by 7% over the next 10 years. I mean, that's the basic proposition. Now, that's easier said than done. I will say that, but that's the basic arithmetic. If we grow this economy by 7% consistently for the next decade, the compounding effect of that will be, at the end of that decade, we will double the size of this economy. So we'll move from just under 6 to 12, essentially, to round up the numbers. But I want to be clear, when we speak about the big push, it is not simply just about the economy.
Oh, no.
It is not. And I think I have to make that clear, because it is simply a way to bring people into a conversation about the transformation of this country and about our currency union. So on the 40th anniversary, looking forward now to the 50th, said, could we come together and unite around this idea of a big push to double economies over the next decade? It is about creating opportunity for St. Lucians, enlarging the possibilities, where underemployed are fully employed, where St. Lucians realize their God-given potential. It is about the capacity to maximize the tourism spend. We have tourists coming, how do we get them to spend more when they come to St. Lucia? It's about reducing our food import bill. We are still, for an agricultural country, we're still importing too much of our food. It's about how our young people fully express themselves and feel they have a fair shot in this economy. So it is not simply about economics. I want to be clear. There are social and other implications around this idea, but it is an idea to begin the conversation and to get people to say, so what can I do? How can I contribute? Let's do this together. That's what this is really all about. To achieve this, there are specific sectoral interventions, but to achieve this, Lisa, we need courage, we need execution, and we need speed. Courage, execution, speed. Who does that sound like to you? Who does that song like to you?
Absolutely, Julian Alfred.
Oh, you're onto it. I know you're sharp. You got it. The world's fastest woman, Julian Alfred. We're super proud about Julian's achievement. And she has to inspire us. Courage, execution. You have to execute in a race. And speed. Those are key ingredients for us to achieve the big push. Now, we can get into the details about digital transformation and depending on how much time we have and so on. But I want to be clear. Courage, execution, speed are essential.
So, but we still have that little bugbear of public debt.
Yes.
To deal with. So as of June 2024, our public debt stood at 4.98 billion. So 3 billion of external debt, 1.9 billion of domestic debt. The debt to GDP for 2023 was 74.5%. That is considerably higher than the debt target that the ECCB has set, which is 60%, your prudential benchmark. So how are we doing in terms of addressing that?
So the good news is that the fiscal situation in St. Lucia has improved. Your revenues are up, your deficit is down. That is good. Compared to when I last sat down with you, the fiscal situation has improved. The challenge for us, St. Lucia, and I say for us because for St. Lucia, but also for us, St. Lucia is our largest member in the currency union, is to get that debt to GDP ratio down to 60% by 2035. For us to achieve that in St. Lucia, we have to begin to run primary surpluses of around 0.5% of GDP per annum, which is basically a $300 million turnaround. So the deficit this year is going to be probably about 60-70 million, but ultimately we have to begin to turn primary surpluses. So that is the challenge, and that's not easy. Because the issue with the big push even idea is that while you're trying to get to 7% and to sustain that, we are being buffeted by shocks. We just had a pandemic. We had a spike of inflation. We've had natural disasters. The global economy goes and comes. So you have to find a way to build resilience in the economy, in our systems or countries, so that we minimize the boom and bust, the yo-yo syndrome as I refer to it, and we can sustain a path of growth. Because for that debt to GDP ratio to come down, we need to sustain growth. The reason why it is coming down now in St. Lucia is because the growth is up, but it's also the deficit is down. Because the debt to GDP ratio is debt divided by GDP, national income. So you need to get growth up, and you need to start to bring the debt down. And not easy, but possible with a consistent, prudent fiscal approach.
So there's also the recommendation of bolstering tax administration initiatives.
Right, and this is really about just efficiency of collection. So we're not saying more taxes. We're saying two things. There are leakages in the system, inefficiencies. I am not advocating increase of taxes at this stage. I'm simply saying we have to do better on collection. We know from experience that with effective tax collection, you need a good law, you need a good IT system, and you need competent and honest people in tax. These three elements are key. I was a financial secretary for a long time. I know of which I speak. Good law, good strong IT system, and honest and competent people who will not do their jobs but do it without fear or favor. You need those things. And as more people are employed, and this is important, St. Lucia is now experiencing record employment, which is another way of saying low unemployment. Record, 15-year, 20-year low.
We're at 11.4%.
There you go. There you go. So, Lisa, some of our people who are being benefiting from safety nets to help them through this difficult period have now gone back into the job market, created their own businesses, and so you have to constantly look at your safety nets to make sure that they fit for purpose. Those who need them should get them. Of course, those who don't, then you need to make sure you're not wasting taxpayers' resources.
By giving those handouts, just so that the people can understand.
Right. Those who need it,
handouts.
The vulnerable should be supported. I want to be very clear about this. But you have to make sure you're not so broad-based that you are channeling limited resources in an inefficient way. The people who need it most should get it. So improve collection, but also improve targeting of safety nets. Both are important in this effort of fiscal improvement.
Is it quite possible that we are seeing that more and more people need, because you speak about the social initiatives, get people back into the workforce, yes, but we've seen the social assistance that has increased. I think there's a 22% increase last year in 2023 over what was spent in 2022.
Yes.
So what does that tell us? That are we having working poor people, even though more people are going back into the workforce?
Well, I mean, we have some of that for sure in our countries, in our region. The inflation has been difficult, and I think there's been an effort by government to try to cushion the effect for those people. So I'm saying you have to continue to monitor the situation. As the employment situation improves, as new opportunities arise, you have to constantly review what you're doing to make sure they fit for purpose. You may find that you need more safety nets or more support for people in education, people going to school, including the South Louis Community College. And you may need a little less somewhere else, but you have to constantly assess that, because there are constraints. You don't have unlimited resources. Where do you put your resources to get, as we say, the biggest bang for your buck?
So when you look at everything, do you find that the 2.5% levy for the health and security levy, has that assisted in government revenue at all? Has there been any impact there?
Well, it certainly has. And I think once the other side of that is the improvement in healthcare.
We haven't seen it.
That has to continue to be pursued. That's important. That is important. Healthcare is an expensive proposition, and that's part of the challenge. And I think sometimes we have to manage expectations about what we can or cannot do. If you want the state to provide these services, then we have to say, how can the state provide them? And principally, it's taxation or CIP.
Which we'll speak about shortly.
Right? Because CIP is not debt. So you have to manage those resources. So I am hopeful that as the government continues to invest, there's a lot of work to rehabilitate and to renovate and upgrade and so on. You will see that impact in the healthcare system, because that is very, very important.
But then I'm sure you would be aware of this, that when we thought that the levy was going to go towards health and security, it was simply as a sort of revenue sort of stream for the government for a policy-based loan. So it would seem that we did not necessarily have the impact that the population was expecting, because people have no difficulty in paying the levy. But the hue and cry has been that it's not really going towards the healthcare and stuff. So for that policy-based loan, the government needed to put in that levy. So,
well, I think the conversation needs to continue. I suspect, and I cannot say this with any authority, firm authority. The government of St. Lucia would be best placed to answer that. But I suspect some of those resources are going into crime fighting. And unfortunately, with the spike in crime, particularly homicides, I suspect more of those resources than they would like have had to be channeled to crime reduction as opposed to health. It's really unfortunate.
That would be your recommendation?
And so, well, that we continue to address the issue of improving the health systems, while, of course, taking an all-of-society approach to this issue of crime.
We spoke about the unemployment rate, and we said it's at 11.4% for the first quarter of 2024. Youth unemployment is still hovering 18%, 18.4%. We are in October going to have the minimum wage or livable wage come in, and I think no one can earn below $1,134.64, somewhere around there. I can't be too certain about that, but $1,100
per month.
Yes, per month. You think that's a good rate?
The minimum
Livable?
wage, I don't know if it's livable. I think it's an improvement, and I think the minimum wage has to be looked at. So I'm glad it's being reviewed now. There's always an important analysis that needs to be done, and an important balance, because you want to make sure there's a livable wage for our workers, and you want to make sure that businesses are able to meet their obligations. And in the process, you don't find that businesses are unable to, and therefore you lose employment because of that. So an assessment of the right level is important. Sometimes you have to phase, so your target might be 1,500, but you may need to do 1,100 this year. Maybe in a couple of years' time, you move it again. Yeah, because you have to make sure your private sector is involved. Many of which are small businesses. I think when people hear minimum wage, sometimes they think about the large established businesses, but they are small businesses. A landscaper. To give a personal example, the minimum wage was raised in Grenada, which is where I'm originally from. I'm a currency union man now, so I'm St. Lucian, I'm Antigua, and I'm Grenadian, but I was born in Grenada. The minimum wage there was raised there last year, early this year. And my landscaper of 20 odd years said to me, I have to increase the monthly arrangement based on the thing. And of course, he has to obey the law, and I respect the law. So I said, okay, well, let's do it. I mean, we made the adjustment because I wanted him to keep his workers as well. So I'm giving a simple example to say small businesses are also impacted. So you have to calibrate
and households,
it. And households. Yeah. So people may say, that's not enough. But you have to move it in a thoughtful way, where you give the workers an increase, which they need and deserve, but also you make sure businesses can stay alive and continue to grow. That's where the big push is important as well, because if you're creating that space and that opportunity, you can raise these things faster.
Now, in some of the larger economies, you do it sector by sector. And I'm wondering as well, well, this is our, first big push towards that. Maybe there's room for us to be able to refine it some more. But when we look at what some of our labor surveys say in terms of being able to have the skills to upskill our people, and I'm wondering if it's not time for us to be able to do the sector by sector, but also to have those steps where you can actually, if someone were to come in with 8 CXCs and maybe then you move from the 1100 and you're moving into maybe as a clerk, and you can earn some more money if you have your CXCs, if you go do a certificate, a course somewhere and so forth. Do you believe that something like that can help us in being able to strengthen look of the workforce?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The focus ultimately has to be on competencies. So not just qualifications, because they're not quite the same. Related, but not competencies, and you pay for competencies. So as people are able to bring skills, not just subject skills, you should pay for that. And the more skillful you are, the more you should be paid. So I think that is where we should go. That's where we should evolve. But, we have to take it in steps and stages.
We spoke about the crime and thing. When you go across, because the crime is it's regional, violent crime. It's a plague that we have to contend with right now. How much of what the situation is with violent crime, gun violence, is affecting what our investment climate looks like?
It certainly has raised questions about our reputation as very peaceful, stable countries. And the truth is that we still are, largely. And I think when investors come and they experience the country, they recognize that. But remember, before you come, you are going to read a report. You're going to see a number, homicides per capita, for example. And that could create a chilling effect. So it's an important issue. Now, we know that as disturbing as the situation, and it is very disturbing, we peace-loving people, we grew up together, we know of a time when we left our homes open and there were no issues and all of that. I think people still recognize that the islands are relatively safe. But we have to work on this question of this gun crime, and we have to nip it in the bud, because it can morph. And Jamaica, for example, which has had a fairly long history now of that sort of crime, has insulated itself somewhat in the tourism sphere, for example, because of the enclaves. Many of their tourism properties are all-inclusive, they're gated, the tourists feel completely safe in those places. The trouble with that, so the numbers continue to rise, and people say, well, look at the numbers here, but look at the tourism, and how do I reconcile that? Well, they have put their arrangements together in such a way that the tourists feel safe, and they are generally safe, and therefore they continue to benefit. The problem with that model is that it then constrains the ability of tourism to impact the local economy, because you are concentrating it in the safe areas, in these resorts, in these enclaves, in these all-inclusives. People are not able to get out on the ground and do what they would normally do if they have concerns about personal security. We encourage a type of tourism that is authentic, where people go out and feel the local people, eat the local cuisine, they sit down and they eat the things that locals eat, they go to the market and experience them. That's part of our culture, and that's part of our offering. We don't want to compromise that, because that changes our product. So crime has to be addressed, because that product will get impacted if people no longer feel they could move around freely. So at this moment, we continue to be relatively safe, all things considered, but obviously we have to take steps to protect. And I mean, beyond tourists, which is obviously, we talk about tourism because of what it means for our economy. It's about us. It's our people. We living together, our young men, our families, our society. And in fact, that's the first consideration. We have to have a space where we can grow up in a safe environment and feel that we can, in fact, enjoy all of the benefits of our lovely tropical paradise. And that is something we have to be very focused on. We cannot simply accept that this is how it is and sort of shrug our shoulder and say, that's between the gangs. That's not bothering me. Well, we live in these countries. These are small societies. We have to be concerned about these things.
Where can the ECCB come in and help?
So the first part of our job where crime fighting is concerned is what we call hardening the financial system against crime. That's the bigger picture of money laundering and how we try to minimize the system being used for money laundering, for the channel and the proceeds of crime and that sort of thing. But beyond that, our focus is on investing in our youth. Investing in our youth. Winning the hearts and minds of these young people. I have seen reports that suggest if we don't channel these young people by the age of 9, we could lose them to a life of crime and deviance. Deviance and crime. So our focus is on youth. So for example, we do the Children's Connection Program. The last Saturday of every month on the Wave at 11 a.m. we have, I think, Stanislaus Bishop and the young lady, Deja, doing the thing. That's important because we want to get these children involved in and an understanding of certain basic digital and financial skills and giving them a path. They could see a way to really express themselves and to make. Then we do the investment in our netball. That's our ladies. We are investing in our STEM skills. We just came off a very successful summer camp, generative AI and Python. And our commitment is to train at least 500 young people every year for the next 5 years. This year we started, we had some from St. Lucia, some from Antigua, some from St. Kitts. Unfortunately, St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada, because of the hurricane, we had to delay them. We hope to do them later this year, but certainly next year, everybody. And to grow that, and we're doing that in partnership with Taiwan. So what are we doing? In the summer, for 1 month, we are engaging these children, these are secondary school students now, in an activity or program that allows them to improve their communication skills, their creativity comes to light, conflict resolution, collaboration. Those are important life skills for them and can assist them in not pursuing crime. If you have skills and you can earn a living, a good living, then why ought you to pursue crime unless you have a tormented mind and that's what you want to do? So we're investing in our young people. Bright Sparks program. This is where we take students out of South Louis Community College, for example, here and across the currency union. Take them to our campus as interns in our IT department for 6 months. Then potentially for another 6 months. In some cases we've hired them. From St. Lucia, the two we had recently, Olivia Langhorn and Rishon Daniel. Rishon has just gone off to Taiwan. Correct. That's investing in our youth. Male and female. Of course, we're particularly concerned about our men at this stage, but male and female, because we have to give opportunities to our women as well, our girls and women as well. And those are areas where ECCB is invested in, helping our young people to grow, to become skilled. One other example, small businesses. We launched in 2020, and this is probably the best kept secret, which is not something I'm proud of, a partial credit guarantee program to support small businesses. So how does this program work? Essentially, through our banks and credit unions and the development bank, a small business, a person with a small business can approach for a loan, and that program guarantees the loan up to 75 to 80%. So if you apply for $100,000, you could potentially get a guarantee for 75 or 80,000 of that loan. The benefit of that is that if you are high risk, and most small business people are high risk, traditionally you won't get the loan. You have to bring collateral. You have no collateral, you have no connections, you just have a dream. You just have a dream. You just have a dream. Maybe a good dream, a good idea, but you need money. Now, with that guarantee, it reduces the risk for the financial institution, and therefore you have the. So far, we've done 30 loans in St. Lucia. We made available $30 million through our governments Taiwan made available another 5 million US. But I've been disappointed with the progress of the program. I'll be honest, I thought it would have gone faster. And what I've discovered as I've moved around the currency union, including here in St. Lucia, people do not know about this program. So we took steps through the Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation to get some marketing done to build some awareness. And in recent months, we have seen an improvement in terms of interest and demand. But we've also asked the banks and the credit unions to get involved and to really take the program. When the customers come in, rather than turn them away, assess them on this program so that they can benefit. So 30 million, we've spent around 5 million, just around 5-6 million in St. Lucia so far for 30 loans. We want to help women in business, creatives, fishers, young techs, those sorts of, anybody, but those are areas of particular interest for us. That's investing in our youth. So a small business person, rather than pursue crime, you have a dream, you have this idea. This program is intended to help you get off the ground.
And you can go to any of the commercial banks and be
any of the commercial banks. It's available to them. There are some who are pushing it more than others, and we're trying to get them out. So we met the bankers yesterday. Again, we reiterated to them, it's important that you push this program. Big push requires small businesses because more than 50% of all employment in St. Lucia come from small businesses.
But there's no onerous expectation on the part of the applicant in terms of, as you say, collateral, but that's not needed.
No. So, well, they may ask for collateral for the 25%. That's not guaranteed. Or they may not. Because in some cases, they may decide they could go unsecured. It depends. But the bulk of it is guaranteed through the Guarantee Corporation. So it really reduces the risk for the bank. We've also said to them, because it's guaranteed, we want to see you give a lower interest rate. You can't charge the same interest rate where there was no guarantee. The guarantee means that the risk to you is lower, therefore the price, the interest rate, for the customer ought to be lower. We've also required is a stronger word. We've said to them, given this value proposition, you have to reduce that. And most of them have said they understand and they agree. So I'm simply saying these are practical ways, Lisa, where the central, we're not law enforcement, there are things we can't do, but these are practical things we have been doing to invest in our youth and our small businesses to give people opportunities. Unfortunately, for too many these days, crime pays. When I was growing up, it was said crime does not pay. Unfortunately, for some, it appears to pay in the short term because the cost is very high, Lisa. The societal cost of crime, the loss of people in their prime, the disruption of families, the loss of our young men, our husbands, our fathers, those are serious costs for the society. So I think we have to make sure that we continue to provide those opportunities for our youth.
And as you speak about that, before we get into the CBI, CIP as we call it here, just quickly get over the Republic Bank situation. Infuriated people.
Yes.
Across the region. How did that situation catch the ECCB off guard, and did you find questioning and how could this have happened?
Well, it caught all of us by surprise, myself included, because I also was one of the customers impacted by this situation. Several of my staff at ECCB were as well. So yeah, that was a very disappointing situation. We made our views very clearly known to Republic on this matter. Republic, of course, explained to us what happened, but we've taken it a step further, Lisa. We have commissioned under the law an independent audit of that situation. And we are awaiting the report. So once we have the report, we will determine what additional steps are required. That is what the law allowed us to do, and that is what we've done. But certainly, what happened there is unacceptable and very disappointing, and we do not want to see that sort of episode, those sorts of episodes occur.
I think, we would have, in the public domain, people saying, well, the ECCB probably doesn't have as much teeth as it should for instances like this. Any
That's true.
plans on being able to create new laws where you will be able to have a firmer handle on such situations?
Absolutely. And we got the approval of our Monetary Council in July 19th, for an amendment of the Banking Act to give us powers with respect to consumer protection. Powers that we do not now have. We did what we could. Some wanted us to do more. We could not do what the law did not allow us to do. So we have, in fact, we were already planning to do that. The Republic situation, I think, just motivated us to move even faster with what we had already planned to do. So the Monetary Council has now approved certain amendments. Those amendments will be tabled in our Parliament soon, we hope, and passed. Once they're passed, it will enable us to take steps under the Banking Act to deal with these things more effectively.
I want to ask you about the Credit Bureau. Last you were with us, that was, coming into shape. Are we any closer to having the establishment of the Credit Bureau?
Yes, we are. This is the month. This is the month, Lisa. I'm pleased to say that the Credit Bureau is on the cusp of a formal launch. The first ever credit report will be issued next week in Antigua and Barbuda. We then expect St. Kitts, St. Vincent, Grenada, St. Lucia. So they're phasing them in. Here in St. Lucia, the government has, as of September 1, brought into force the Credit Reporting Act, which is the law that enables the Credit Bureau. So now, the financial institutions, banks, credit unions, would be able to sign subscriber agreements with the Credit Bureau operator, share information, and begin to operate the Credit Bureau. This is very important. And again, going back to the big push. For the big push, you need more credit. You need to have expansion. And what we know for a certain fact is that everywhere a credit bureau has been established, credit has increased. We know that for a certain fact. And we are expecting a similar outcome with respect to the Currency Union and here in St. Lucia. So, and it also means with better credit reporting, the banks should be able to make faster decisions, banks and credit unions, about loans. So I hear these days sometimes the banks take months to make a decision. First of all, you have to get an appointment, then it could take months for them to give you a yes or a no. The Credit Bureau would allow them to make faster decisions about credit. It would also allow them to better assess and price risk. And the pricing is important because if you are a good credit, you should be paying less in terms of your interest rate. Your interest rate should be low. Right now, in the absence of information, all of us may be paying higher interest rates than we ought to pay. So the Credit Bureau is a very important development. I know my predecessor, Sir Dwight, wanted a Credit Bureau, and I know he'll be smiling to know and to see we are now here. He started that process many moons ago. We had the vision, we pressed it, and now we are on the cusp.
The ordinary person is maybe a little, have some trepidation over this. Because people would say, well, how far back would you have to go to be able to establish that report on an individual so you can get that credit score? Some people would have said, maybe during the COVID years,
yes,
that they would have had a slump.
That is understood and taken into account. It's 3 to 5 years, but there's a recognition of what the COVID period was. People will not be unduly penalized for those things. And if you followed us on our Facebook page or ECCB Connect's channel, the CEO of the Credit Bureau operator was explaining some of those things very clearly, and I think in a way that people could understand. And I'll encourage people to check it out. We also have frequently asked questions. What it is, how it works, what can you get, what are your rights, all of those things are there. And there's some public education that is now underway to help people understand the role and function of a credit bureau.
So we don't need to worry, it's not some albatross.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. Absolutely not.
So let's get into the CBI or CIP. You've said that we need to protect and enhance the CIB program while leveraging the proceeds productively, including fast-tracking investment to budding sectors. What did you mean by this?
I mean that first of all, you have to protect the flow and the source. You can't channel to sectors if you have no source. CIP is an extremely important source of income for our member countries. In some of our countries, 2 of them, it accounts for more than 50% of all of their revenues. Here in St. Lucia, it may be around 30%. It's also a significant source. A lot of the infrastructure that is planned will be funded by CIP. So why I say the productive sectors is because they cannot and ought not to be used for recurrent expenditure. You have to make the most of it. If you think about it as a source of income, even a sovereign income or wealth fund, you want to make sure there's a legacy from CIP. When you look back, you could say, CIP did this, and this. It helped us with our hospital. It helped us with a particular piece of infrastructure. It helped us with this skill center. It helped us with, very specific things that can generate income long after it's been established. You want to put it in the productive sector. So for us to do that, it's very important that we preserve these programs so that they can work for the benefit of the people of our region. Remember, our debt is relatively high across the region. We're too rich, quote unquote, to get grants because compared to Africa and some other places, we are classified as middle income or even high middle income, or high income in some cases. We are small and therefore we do not have access to the international capital markets the way a typical developing country or emerging market would. So our sources are limited. It's taxation, some borrowing, and CIP.
How involved has the ECCB been in the CIP programs over the years?
Our involvement since I assumed office has been an advocacy, saying exactly what I just said, that we must be transparent about the ins and outs, the flows of the program. And the way some of our governments, most of them do it now, is to go to the parliaments with
table the report.
Correct, right? Transparency. That's important. Secondly, we must have common standards around, for example, denials. If an applicant is denied in one of our countries, they ought not to be approved in another. You can't, that should be a red flag and we should take steps. We were advocating those things.
Before the U.S. proposed the
long before. You go back to my record on country outreach, 2016, 2017, it's on the record. You could see what the central bank was saying then. Use, transparency, collective action, collective common standards around how we treat up. We were consistent. There were 4 or 5 things that we consistently said we needed to do, come together and to protect. We are there now. We are now here. So for example, with the US agreement that we signed in February 2023, we meaning the CBI countries, and we supported advocacy. So let me just, before I move to that, one of the ways we advocate is our engagement with the US Treasury. The ECCB has consistently been in dialogue with the US Treasury about working with our member countries. Rather than trying to shut the programs down, work with us. If we need to strengthen them, let's discuss and agree on how we can support our member countries. The reason why the central bank is even interested in this is because of how important these programs are. I just explained 40, 30, 40, 50, 55% in some of our countries.
Are we on the verge of losing the programs?
No, that's not my expectation or understanding. We've made progress with the US. So for example, 6 principles. Principle number 1, collective treatment of denials. What does that mean? It means that when an applicant is denied in a member country, 2 things. 1, everybody is notified, and 2, nobody will approve an applicant that has been denied in a member country. That is what we call collective treatment of denials. We have now signed an MOU amongst ourselves, and 4 of the 6 commitments which we made to the US in February 23 are now in substantial compliance. 4 of the 6. The 2 that we are not yet fully complied with are audits, which have begun in several of our countries, and over the next 6 months, all 5 of our countries would have done their audits, and the physical retrieval of revoked passports. So the U.S. is very pleased, as evidenced in our recent meeting 2 weeks ago in Grenada, with the progress we've made on these 6 commitments. And every year, we meet, monitor, we report, we discuss, and we continue to cooperate. We also, in that week of meetings, met with the UK and the European Union. And so the dialogue is there. To the extent that the CIP regulator, which we are now going to set up, and again, we, ECCB, we were asked by our heads, given our regulatory experience, to lead the effort for that. We've embraced that task, and we are now proceeding with that job. The UK, in principle, we have not seen it in writing. There's a new government, so they work in their process. In principle, has indicated it will support us in establishing a CIP regulator. So what we are seeing, Lisa, is evidence of cooperation. I don't believe the programs are going to be shut down. I believe the programs are being strengthened, and we, ECCB, will do our part for our member countries, which is to say for the people of St. Lucia and the Currency Union, to protect these programs.
But we have work to do, because I'm not just saying that in the context of what the claims are being made by MSR Media, which you are familiar with over in St. Kitts and Nevis and here in St. Lucia, pertaining to the programs in its RICO case. But we've seen Grenada in the last week issue press statements, memos condemning the sale of citizenship below the stipulated price, and an agent company, China Hengzheng, it identified it in the memo, indicating that there was underselling, and they're investigating that as well. We've just had the resignation, we don't know why, but the resignation of the recently installed chief executive officer of the CIU up in St. Kitts Nevis. Sources are indicating that it may have to do with some evidence within the MSR case that is unfolding, again for the underselling of the citizenships. So it would seem that while you, Governor, you have stressed the importance of the program to the economies, that somehow within the individual countries, we seem to have jeopardized the programs. Would you agree?
So what I will say is that underselling is strictly prohibited, and whoever is underselling needs to be, once there is evidence of it, prompt reporting to the FIU, the Financial Intelligence Unit of our member countries. Every country has an FIU, and to the units themselves, both, immediately. So anybody who knows about any underselling needs to take that step immediately. We have to protect these programs. Now, in June of this year, our 5 heads took a decision, the 5 heads of the CBI, CIP countries, to agree on pricing. That was an important step, because we seem to have been competing against each other on pricing, which we always felt was not an ideal situation. We've always felt we needed to come alongside on price, work together. There's enough business there. We don't need to be trying to race to the bottom on price. We've now agreed on the 200,000 threshold, and that is where we are. And we now want that to settle, as let the market settle with that. There are several ways to make $1 million. You can do it with $100,000 and 10 people, or you could do it with $200,000 and 5 people. I don't know what the ultimate market effect will be with the new pricing arrangement. I think we have to give time to see that. But certainly, by harmonizing on price and by taking steps to make sure that any actor in the space who is trying or involved in attempting to undersell or underselling are dealt with very severely, we have now an opportunity to protect our programs. The matters that you mentioned, some of them are now the subject of litigation. We will see how that shakes out, and obviously, but in terms of what ECCB is doing, that's the question you asked. We are now focused on helping our countries set up a CIP regulator.
The regulator. How far back would the regulator or that commission be able to, in terms of its review? Are you just starting at the point of establishment, or there's some retroactive review that will happen?
Well, I don't know about the retroactive. I mean, the law that establishes the CIP is now and going forward. I mean, when the law is passed in our member countries, in all probability, the law will be passed in 2025. So I don't know about going back. I think where there's evidence of any wrongdoing or underselling, law enforcement needs to deal with that. I don't think that should be on the regulator, in all fairness, right? So that's why I said, if you know of anyone knows of underselling, FIU, law enforcement, and the unit, and then they will work through their network to address these situations. They all have cooperation that goes beyond the border. They can speak to US, UK, Canada, anywhere in the world. They have a network to address these things. The regulator is focused on standards, compliance, and engagement with international partners.
How serious is the situation in Dominica, the loss of correspondent banking?
What situation? What
The
loss?
loss of correspondent banking in Dominica.
What loss of what correspondent bank?
Well, the Prime Minister of Dominica has acknowledged that there was some issues with the correspondent banking. We're getting reports that there is a loss with the UK, with European banks. Bank of America, I'm not certain if there is a loss of correspondent banking there as well. But within the CIP, it's very difficult to have any sort of money transfers happen pertaining to the CIP. The ECCB is not aware?
So I'm not aware of a Bank of America loss. I mean, we are in touch with the correspondent banks on an ongoing basis. We did lose correspondent banks several years ago. We had to fight very hard as a region to preserve our correspondent bank relations. And for the most part, those things, the relations have stabilized. We have had one or two, I think in the last year in the UK, there's one institution I'm aware of that did withdraw services from a couple of our countries, not just Dominica, if I recall, maybe 2 or 3 of the countries. And we have had conversations with that particular correspondent bank. The reality is that we need correspondent banks to be able to do business with the rest of the world. So as a central bank, we are in constant dialogue with correspondent banks to understand if there are any concerns and to see what, if anything, we can do as a central bank to support our member countries and specifically our banks to preserve those relationships. Clearly, it's a dynamic situation and we have to continually. So I'm not sure if there's something new that I haven't heard in the last couple of days, the question you raised, but to my knowledge, there's no loss of correspondence with Bank of America. We do from time to time have conversations with several of them, including Bank of America. And we have to continue to do that. And part of the reason I think we want to have a regulator beyond the obvious standards and so on is to reduce the risk profile of these programs. Because to the extent that we reduce the risk profile, Lisa, then I think it provides additional comfort and confidence to our correspondent banks. So that is an important outcome, an important benefit of pursuing the CIP regulator.
So the claims of money laundering within the CBI scheme or the programs concerning 4 OECS banks, it's said to have affected the correspondent banking. Are you aware at all?
I am not aware that there's been any specific issue. No correspondent bank has come to our central bank on any specific issue on that.
3 more banks are said are expected, along with the bank in St. Kitts Nevis, to be named in the MSR lawsuit for money laundering. What are those consequences for us, and especially with the bank's stability, the ECCB's stability, as well as the relationship with the U.S. Treasury?
So, you suggesting developments of which I'm unaware. So I have to start with that. I don't know that any of these additional banks are going to be losing any correspondence. I have no knowledge of that. I have not seen neither from the banks themselves nor from the correspondent bank that is going to happen.
But even to have a bank identified.
I want to be careful that we're not taking speculation as fact. right?
No.
As a central bank, we have to focus on the factual matrix and work with that. Now, to your question about implication, we are concerned about the preservation of these relations. It is vital for financial stability. You cannot run a bank effectively in this day and age without a correspondent bank. So we need to preserve these relationships. And anything that we can do as a central bank to support our countries, to support our banks, to preserve these things, whether that is advocacy with the U.S. Treasury, whether that is direct engagement with the correspondent bank, we will do as we have done. We will be next month in Washington, D.C. around the annual meeting, and we will have some more of those conversations. So that is the stance of the central bank. Any suggestion, anything that could undermine those relationships or the reputation of our banks and our currency union would concern the ECCB.
Do you care to know what's contained within the lawsuit? Have you read it? It's available online. Have you read? And
I have seen commentary, including yours.
And that of the guests, especially Dr. Fontaine from Dominica. Did you watch that one?
No, I didn't see that one. But that's how I know you're alive and well, Lisa. I've seen some commentary. And it's been brought to my attention, some of the things. I have obviously not read all of it. I think, as I said, these things are now a matter of litigation. Let us see how they unfold. So I haven't read all of it, but I have, the things that if a bank is named or there is some reference to the Caribbean, obviously I pay attention. So I keep an eye on those things, but I can't say I've read all of those things because I have not, in all honesty.
Okay. We want to be able to open up the line so that you can have your say with the governor. We will take a very short break and we will be back with your calls and your comments. Thank you so much for staying with us, and we are ready to take your calls. Right here, we're having a conversation with the governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. He's Mr. Timothy Antoine. And we go straight to the phone lines. Okay, we lost that caller. Thank you so much. Don't forget, you can call in at 451-9788. Governor, while we await, we have a question here from the ECCB Connect's YouTube channel, and it says, is consolidation needed in the regional banking sector? Seems like there are so many little banks with very high overheads. Should more consolidation be encouraged for more efficiency?
Well, we support the principle of consolidation. Thank you, caller, for the message, for the question. We do support the principle of consolidation. Interestingly, we have had consolidation over the last 4 years, not necessarily how we had initially envisaged, but with the exit of the Canadian banks, we have in fact seen a smaller number of banks in every country, or in almost every country. And, there are pros and cons. People want choice, so obviously they want to have more, not less, but as the caller astutely recognizes, running a bank is very expensive business. Compliance with cyber, climate, AML, CFT, and all of those things, those cost money. And so the consolidation, meaning where the banks you have a smaller number of banks who are able to spread their costs and to basically better effectively deliver services, that is very important. So I am not an advocate at this point in time for a smaller number of banks. I think you have to have some choice. You must have 2 or 3 banks in every country, ideally. There are 1 or 2 cases in the currency union, like in Anguilla, where we have 2, in Montserrat we have 1. Not ideal, but they are smaller countries, and that's where we are. So where you have 3 banks, 4 banks, I think that's a good number, and therefore I think it's just for them to continue to improve their customer service and the way they treat and deal with our customers.
We also have another question here. The credit unions are growing at a rapid pace. Some are larger than many banks. Will the ECCB seek to bring them under their wing for regulation purposes?
No, the ECCB will not be regulating credit unions. Thanks for the question. Again, it's an important one. And this week in St. Lucia, I've had opportunity to address that issue because I think there have been some concerns, fears, rumors, speaking, also some falsehoods about what our role is with respect to credit unions. So let me be clear. Credit unions will continue to be supervised by the national regulators. In the case of St. Lucia, it's the Financial Services Regulatory Authority, the FSRA. What we have agreed at the level of the Monetary Council is that we will set up a regional standard setting body consisting of each of the national regulators, so that includes the FSRA, the ECCB, and the securities regulator. And that body will ensure there's a harmonization of standards across the currency union. Because as I said to our credit unions when I addressed them in June at the regional conference, are customer expectations rising? The answer was yes. Are you facing the same credit risk as banks? The answer is yes. Are you facing the same climate risk as banks? The answer is yes. Are you facing the same cyber risk as banks? The answer is yes. As we speak, non-performing loans in the banking system is around 9.8.
Hold that point there.
In our credit unions, it's 9.5.
We just want to be able to entertain the caller. We'll get back to
Sure.
that point. The non-performing loans, very important.
Sure.
Thank you for holding on. What's your comment or question to the governor?
Good evening, Mr. Antoine.
Good evening, sir.
Question. In reference to the what is the possibility of being viewed as a world currency? And if so, will this affect St. Lucia? Thank you.
I'm sorry, we were not able to hear all of it. Can you repeat the question, please? You came across a little choppy. We had a little issue here.
Yes.
Is he gone? Okay, he's gone. We were not sorry about that, caller. We didn't get the clarity we needed.
Yes.
So we could have answered that question.
Yes. Yes.
But you're making a point, Governor, about the non-performing loans.
Yes, so what I'm saying is that the high non-performing loans is a situation in both our banks and credit unions. And for us, that's credit risk, the risk to the portfolio. Remember, banks and credit unions have depositors' money. They make loans based on deposits. So you have to manage credit risk. If not, you put depositors' funds at risk. The credit bureau will help with that. The credit bureau will help with that.
And we're grateful for that. So hold on.
Good.
Let's just say hi to the caller. Thank you so much. What's your question for the
Hi,
governor?
good evening. How are you doing?
Good evening, sir.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Antoine.
Go ahead with your question.
You hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. On one Sunday evening, I was listening to a program on my TV where the leader of the opposition said, come Monday, which was the following day, that one of the major banks in St. Lucia would be losing its correspondent banking. And then Bank of St. Lucia had to come out and say, this is categorically untrue. They have not lost any corresponding note. They have gotten any signals or any reaction from the outside saying that they're going to lose the corresponding banking. And none of the banks in St. Lucia have said so either. So I'm saying, as the governor of the ECCB, it's not just prudent for the leader of the opposition to make such a statement like that, to scare people. Because when you tell people that come Monday, one of the major banks, which is one of the major banks in St. Lucia, is Bank of St. Lucia, that is going to lose its corresponding banking. You're putting people at fear, in fear and wondering, what was going to happen to them. So do you think that's prudent or wise for the leader of the opposition to tell St. Lucians that they're going to lose the corresponding? And he didn't say so in St. Lucia, so he said so while he was in New York on a political platform.
Thank you so much. Let's see with the governor.
So I think it's always a good idea to check with the source. So if you hear anyone, Prime Minister, leader of the opposition, or citizen, here's something, it's always good to check and verify. So I think it would be useful to call a specific institution and say, I am aware of, heard of, is that true? That's always a useful way to ensure that we convey the most accurate information. I don't know whether there are things that may happen in the future, but at this stage, we can't speculate on that. So that is what I would say. Just generally, let's make sure that we check verify, check sources, so we minimize that sort of thing.
Let's say hello to another caller. Thank you so much. What's your question, comment to the governor?
Yes, sir. My feedback. I listen to your program concerning skills and loans for people.
Okay, I'm not certain, caller. Wherever you are, the connection is not steady at all. So we're having a very difficult time in being able to understand what your question is. I do apologize. Try again. Maybe turn around a bit.
Are you hearing me?
It's a little clearer. Go ahead. Try again.
Yes.
Okay, I'm saying, I keep hearing. You hear me now, right?
Go ahead with the question, please.
There's just a comment I want to make concerning loans and.
Okay, maybe you are very muffled. We're having a very difficult time in hearing exactly what your question is. Perhaps do not put the telephone too close to the mouthpiece is too close.
Okay, are you hearing me now, sir?
Go ahead and ask the question.
No, what I'm saying, just for.
No. Okay, it's not working, caller. I'm so sorry. It's not working. So try again. I apologize. Governor, that's one of the things in the big push.
Digital transformation, stronger, better connectivity. Because he's coming and going. We're not hearing the question.
So for years we've been advocating for better connectivity. What else do we need to do?
We have to deliver it.
Okay. We have another call. Thank you so much. Question, comment for the governor?
It's me again. I have a question. Mr. Antoine. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Concerning the what will happen if there's a devaluation of the U.S. dollar on the world?
Let's take it in phases. Hold on, because we're having a little difficult time. I think he's asking what will happen with if there's a devaluing of the U.S. dollar.
I think the gist is okay. So there are concerned discussions these days about the U.S. dollar, and some of it, of course, has been occasioned by the establishment of the BRICS Bank and other initiatives to reduce the dependence of some countries on the U.S. dollar. And in fact, we've seen a heightened focus on that post the Ukraine war, when because of sanctions, some countries have tried to, again, further reduce the use of the U.S. dollar in their trade and their transactions. I want to be very clear. The U.S. dollar will remain the world's reserve currency for the foreseeable future. That's our view at this point in time. For us in the currency union, we must maintain strong reserves in US dollars. One, because we are pegged to the US dollar. Most of our imports come from the United States or through the United States. Therefore, for us to pay for these imports, we need US dollars.
Currency to do so. We have another
Secondly-
caller online. Just hold that point, Sir Governor. Sorry, we want to be able to give the caller a chance.
Sure.
Good evening. Thanks for calling. Your question, comment to the Governor, please.
Yes, good evening. I am from the context of the big push. And if it is placed within the context of EESG, that is political, economic, and technological factors, how potential investors and in the Caribbean of quality protect and
We're having
zero-
great difficulty in hearing you.
So caller, you seem to be asking something about ESG, but nothing else. We weren't able to hear the question.
In the context of the big push, is that what you're saying?
the big push at
Okay,
EESG.
we're so sorry. We can't hear you at all. We apologize, caller. Can't hear you at all. I think we must have been asking that in the context of the big push and the productive sectors. But we have another call. Let's see how that connection goes.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Your question and comment to the Governor, please.
Hello.
Hi, good evening. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, sir.
Mr. President, for the longest while, we've been rate paid on deposits by the bank. The question is it because of the high liquidity or was it encouraged rather than saving?
So could you repeat the question? For the longest while, and then I heard liquidity. I missed the piece in between.
Low interest on deposits.
The low deposits, low interest rates on the deposits.
Oh, I see.
Is it because of high liquidity or is it because it's more?
So I think he wants to know what exactly is the
So
cause.
we trying to piece it together. So in our system, the one rate that the central bank regulates is the minimum savings rate. That rate is 2%. Now the truth of the matter is that rate is a somewhat artificial rate, meaning that given the strong growth in deposits have been growing faster than loans. There is excess liquidity, to your comment, sir. And therefore, if we were to liberalize that rate, in other words, let the market forces determine the rates based on supply and demand, that rate will be less than 1%. In most of the Caribbean, there is no minimum savings rate, and in most of the Caribbean, interest on savings is under 1%. So the ECCB has, to try to encourage small savers over the years, kept a minimum savings rate. It used to be 4%, then it was brought down to 3%, it is now 2%. But to answer your question, yes, there is excess liquidity, and therefore that rate will not go up. If anything, it will go down.
Thank you so much for calling in. What's your question, comment to the Governor, please? Good evening to you.
Hello,
Good evening, sir.
Governor. Good evening, Lisa. Very good. I have a
Thank you so much.
question regarding the big group and the partial gap. You did mention the commercial are part of the
So
question.
you're a bit choppy.
the-
So can you? I think you're asking about the partial grants.
Partial credit
Yeah, the
guarantee.
question is on union participating in the partial credit.
Are credit unions participating?
Yes.
Right. So the answer is
Thank you so much, caller.
yes. So the answer is yes. They have started. It's still early, so we started with the banks, development banks, and slowly we're now starting to get credit unions. They're just getting on board, some of them. So we want to see, and in fact, caller, I really believe that credit unions have a very important role to play in this program. There are customers that need to be reached by this program that perhaps are best reached through our credit unions. So I've been encouraging the credit unions to embrace the program and to begin to use it to benefit their members.
We have another call online. Thank you so much. What's your question, comment to the governor, please? Thank you, caller. Go ahead.
Hello,
Please.
good night. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I'm calling from the context of the big push in terms of having the economies grow by 2030. Now, this will require entrepreneurial innovation, and those innovations will have an impact on what we call PEST, P-E-S-T, political, economic, social, and technological development of the Caribbean. What mechanisms will you have in place, the bank will have in place, to provide recourse or redress from Caribbean nationals who believe that the playing field is not level, who believe that maybe because of the affiliation to certain groups, etc., that they are not getting the opportunities that they should get, that the projects are being addressed? Who should they turn to, and what mechanism will you have in place if we have to achieve economic growth? Because we have to look at the social context, the society we live in. We have to look at the economic context in terms of the impact it will have on competitiveness, new ideas, etc., and of course the technology to drive that. And after one is able to satisfy that context, then you of course come in touch with the human resource aspect of it. So what mechanisms will the ECCB have in place for individual investors who find that they have not been given a fair chance to invest in the Caribbean? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your call there.
So, caller, that's an interesting question. There are certain things the ECCB can do, and there are certain things, unfortunately, we cannot do. The one thing we can do is to continue to keep our EC dollar safe and strong, so that investors, local and foreign, can benefit from having a stable currency. That's something we can do, we are doing, and we must continue to do. We also believe that by creating vehicles like partial credit guarantee, we give smoothly in the political and social realm, which frankly beyond the capability of the central bank. What I hope will happen with the big push challenge is a serious conversation in every country about how we get everybody on all sides of the political divide, home and abroad, so that includes our diaspora, to be involved in this big push, this thrust to transform our economies. But that cannot be simply on the central bank. We will do what we can on the financial side of things, but there are other things that require other involvements by other parts of the society and are coming together for us to be able to achieve that. And I hope and I encourage you to reach out to those other sectors as well.
Now, considering we're having issues with the line, I'm certain that one of our GA regulars, Mr. Rick Wayne, this is a question from him, and I hope he doesn't mind that I'm identifying. But he is asking, has anyone been prosecuted in relation to the infringement of CIP regulations, to the best of your knowledge? Perhaps you want to...
No, I don't, and I don't have a line of sight of that. ECCB is not the regulator of CIB or CIP. We're not monitoring regulations per se. So again, like I said, any allegations or any discrepancies, any illegal activities ought to be addressed by law enforcement. There are mechanisms to address that. And that's why I said prompt reporting to FIU and to the CIP unit for them to take the next steps. But ECCB has no role in that regard. And so that's not an area for us.
So because he was asking to whom should complaints be addressed, and you said...
FIU,
your
Financial Intelligence Unit, you should go there and let them, initiate the process, contact through the Egmont Group, other international, whether it's Interpol, whoever, to be able to address those things. But that's not something that ECCB is involved in.
Now, are there any sanctions for late placing of audited CIP accounts before Parliament?
I don't know. Every country has laws with respect to when they publish these reports. These have to be timely reports. So for example, for our central bank, by law, we are required to publish our audited financial statements 3 months after the end of our financial year. Our financial year ends at March 31. By June 30th of every year, we have to publish our annual audited financial statements and annual report. And we do so without fail. I don't know whether, those sort of strict provisions are in our countries. I think perhaps they have a little more latitude when, and maybe we should tighten that. But again, I cannot speak to specific regulation. I simply do not know.
Would that be a matter for the regulator?
Going forward, yes. Oh, yes. Going forward, the regulator will insist on publication of certain things by a certain time. The standards, licensing of agents, requirements for certain things to be published within a time frame, and sanction in law if you are in breach. Yes, that will be under the regulator.
A final question here pertaining to what was the problem that caused problems with the correspondent banks? So what prompted the problems with the correspondent banks?
The big issue 5 years ago, for example, was the question of size. The correspondent banks felt that the return for the risk that they were taking on by dealing with these smaller jurisdictions was not worth it. And therefore, some of them withdrew. We did strongly advocate then that made no sense, because what you were doing is cutting off regions and countries from the international system and encouraging the very thing that you said you want to avoid. People having to find other means of transacting business, including putting money under the mattress, which is not a good idea. So we saw a change, and a lot of advocacy went in from our region to the US and the OCC and other places on that. Interestingly enough, as several of our banks consolidated by purchasing the Canadian banking operations and got bigger, they have become more attractive to the correspondent banks. So that in the last 3-4 years, in fact, we have seen in some cases an improvement in the number of correspondent bank relations that our indigenous banks have. So it's an economic issue. For them, I'm making $1 million here. That's not enough for the cost I have to pay for the compliance people to monitor this account and this country. I need to make $5 million or whatever.
But at the same time, it provided an avenue for us to be able to expand ourselves, indigenous banks at least.
Correct. So in a sense, that has strengthened. But you have to remain vigilant. With correspondent banking relations, you can't relax. That's why I said we meet periodically with these correspondent banks to understand if there are any concerns, to understand if there are any changes in their appetite, to understand if there's any changes in the operating environment, if there are any global strategy changes, because sometimes it's a strategic decision. Like the Canadian banks have made, we are moving out of these smaller countries, we are focusing on the larger countries where we could make higher profits. That's a pure strategy decision. There's nothing we could do about that. But we try to know and try to see how we could position the region, minimize those things, and prepare where we have to deal with them.
I have a final question before we get to your closing remarks. The regional government securities market is a physical manifestation of the success of regional integration. How does the ECCB facilitate more retail participation by the regular man and woman within the RGSM?
That's a very good question, and we want to see more. At the moment, on the region, so for people who don't know, the regional government securities market is where our governments do their treasury bills and bonds. They sell them, people invest, and that market works very, very well. Since its establishment, that market has raised close to $20 billion. The truth is that most of the people who are investing are institutional investors, 97.5%. Only 2.5% of the investors on that market are individual investors. Lisa, we need to see that change. In fact, that takes me to a bigger issue of wealth creation, where only 4% of our people, 1 in 25, are invested in the regional and international market. 4%. In the United States, that number is 60%, 3 in 5. So what we've decided, and the governments have approved, is that going forward, we are going to reduce the threshold. The threshold used to be $5,000. That has now been reduced to $500. We are going to create opportunities for specialized issuance, and we probably will start with St. Lucia. That's the thinking. That's the plan. As early as this year, before the end of the year, to create special instruments where retail people, small people like you and me and others, can invest. So not the insurance companies and the credit unions. They will invest. They will continue. But you want to give smaller investors an opportunity to begin, because we want to move from simply being good savers to also being good financial investors. We have $25 billion in the financial system, more than $25 billion now. But when you look, only 4% of us are invested in this market. So we've taken steps, and you'll be announcing some things very soon about how we want to encourage people. For example, on a monthly basis, I'm going to put $100 in the RGSM through my bank or credit union. $100. And people say, that money is available. I mean, people are investing in cryptos and all sorts of things. So they have some ability to invest. But we wanted to invest them in the RGSM, where the money is relatively safe and where they can get a return, which is higher than 2%. At savings. So that is something we are working on, because we want to see more of that.
Thank you for choosing St. Lucia, but as you're doing that, financial literacy, critical. I see that a survey that the ECCB did, that St. Lucia was second to last for financial literacy.
Yes, second lowest in the currency union. So we have a lot of work to do, including in Creole.
Oui, non mais professeur.
Oui.
Ça parle créole?
Oh, petit peu. C'est très important. So we have to be able to get our people more engaged on financial literacy. And there's a big program that we're planning to build out with respect to financial literacy here in St. Lucia and across the currency union. We have to empower people.
Yes. I want to give you, before we close off, Dcash 2.0. Tell us about that, the pilot phase. You had some issues, but you're ready to go 2.0.
Well, the pilot phase has ended. We learned our lessons, what to do and what not to do. I want to thank those who participated in the pilot. There are some rich lessons there. So we're taking our time now, reviewing those lessons, engaging stakeholders. One of the things we want to do differently going forward is to, rather than have our own wallet, to make Dcash available in wallets of approved institutions, credit unions, banks, fintechs, so that the private sector is driving that. We brought the idea, but now we want the private sector to sort of run with it. We are looking to see if we could have offline capability, because there are some people who do not have internet access. You see the challenges tonight, even with getting calls. There
was a system failure, network failure earlier on.
Oh, I see.
With one of the providers, and just before we came on air, it was rectified.
I see. So we have work to do, but we'll share more about that in due course. But Dcash 2.0 is something that we're working on, and we'll come to you in due course.
And so we need to work on the providers.
Definitely.
We need to work on the airlift, Governor.
Definitely. Well, it's improved from 2 years ago.
The cost.
The cost is an issue.
Booked something for St. Vincent, $1,500.
Yeah, it's really prohibitive, to be honest. But the good news is that there are more options than we had. We don't have to go through Miami now for as regularly as before in terms of trying to get to a Caribbean country. That was a travesty. And I'm hoping that as we build out the new connectivity network, we could eventually see a low enough prices. I can't promise it, but I'm hoping.
So conversations towards, perhaps lowering some of what those taxes are?
That will require, because half of the ticket is 50% tax fees and charges, but that will require a collective approach by our member countries to be able to do that. But those conversations have started. We'll see if they yield any result.
Your closing comments, Governor, as you look towards the big push for St. Lucia.
Well, St. Lucia, let us be inspired by Julia and Alfred. There is no perhaps moment in the history of this country that brought this country together as that moment of triumph at this Olympics. And we need to take inspiration. Like I said, we need courage, we need execution, and we need speed. Julian points the way. So let us come together around the big push for St. Lucia. St. Lucia is the region's, our currency union, largest economy. And therefore we need St. Lucia to do well for St. Lucians and for the currency union. And I want to recommit tonight from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank to support you on this journey. We at the ECCB deem it a pleasure to serve the people of St. Lucia and our currency union, and on behalf of all our members of staff, management, board, and council, I want to reaffirm our support for you. So congratulations. Let's get moving. We have a lot of work ahead of us.
Thank you so much, Governor. I want to thank you and for giving us the opportunity to host you this evening for this special conversation.
Thank you.
I do hope that you've enjoyed the program. Lots of information there. I hope it has been useful to you as well. Thank you so much. I'm Mr. Joseph, as always. See you next time.